Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another Historical Humans Reacts. And today we are going to the Deep South. We are venturing down to South Carolina, where a new museum is open at America's largest slave port site, and it taps into a deeply rooted joy.
Yes. This museum is the International African American Museum, which I believe is already open, or is at the very least set to open this year. I believe it will be open at the time this recording comes out, but not the time at which we are recording it, because it is set to
Yes.
open on June 27th. I found the date.
Ooh.
Uh, in a place called Gadsden Wharf within the city of Charleston of South Carolina, uh, where more than 40% of the United States enslaved Africans arrived for sale into slavery.
Wow, that's
So
a
you know,
really large marker.
yeah, two out of five enslaved persons who entered the United States passed through this pier or this wharf,
Jeez. And
which is scary.
yeah, and the crazy thing is, there only was a historical marker to note it. It's almost like a country built on racial discrimination isn't proud of that history.
You're it's always unfortunate that these things are often overlooked. I mean, it is always intentional. It really is. Even from black cemeteries to historical black uh, sites, be it as something as horrible as this, they will always be overlooked because it is a part of history. Plenty of people don't want you all to know.
Not to mention, this is something that is actively being attacked nationwide currently, where a lot of political action is being taken to ban race education. So topics like this aren't taught. Topics like the Tulsa race riots aren't taught because they can evoke negative feelings.
Yeah, but don't worry, we still teach them. We had a whole podcast on that.
Yeah, we're not gonna
Yeah,
let
we
some
are we are not
censorship.
we are not governed by anything.
History
Anyway,
shall
yes,
not be governed.
and this museum, just getting it into existence has been a struggle. It has been in the works for 20 years, so they've been at this since 2003, trying to get this museum built and running, and it's finally here. So I think that's going to be uh, fun's not the right word, but I don't know. I'm excited for it.
And
There's not a
it also
Yeah, no, it's weird to say you're excited to go see a museum, but
it's
it
good
should be
that this
exciting.
museum is
Yeah,
around now, and that's actually one of the things that's highlighted because in recent years there's been a lot of issues with race that have come up. The one that they note is the protests in 2020 with George Floyd. But the thing is, Charleston as a town draws 7 million tourists a year. So there's a very good likelihood that people will check out this museum and hopefully will learn something. And the city itself is trying to rectify some of its parts within it. I mean, in 2018, it apologized for its role as the slave trade. Um, but also, kind of ironically, or whole story, is not far from where it is was the site of Fort Sumter, the beginning of the American Civil War. So there's a
yeah.
lot of history that ties African Americans to this site.
Yeah, I was about to
yeah,
bring it up because it's important to note that as much as this article and probably our subsequent discussion is going to focus on specifically the slave trade and Carolina and this museum. This museum is it's not the museum of the slave trade, but is in fact a museum of African American history, and it is rather poignant that it is located between the main port for slaves entering the United States and the site of the first shot of the Civil War. Like the fate of you the majority of African Americans was decided in some way here. And that's it's a very important spot for something like this to exist.
Well, and
yeah.
this
It is the fact I like that you brought up that it also is important. It shows much more than just like just the slave trade aspect, and has a lot more of Black history in it, because obviously Black history is not just relegated to a month. Um, there's a lot of things that have been pushed to the sides. I mean, I remember growing up, the only Black history I ever heard about was Martin Luther King and George Washington Carver with the Peanuts.
Yeah,
I got
that's a
George
good
Washington Carver. I just had King and Tubman.
I didn't. Oh no, I did learn about Tubman, didn't
I
I?
got, I got Tubman. I didn't get Carver. So yeah, we did. There was a lot of very much erasure in history, and this is definitely a good cornerstone to have to start pushing back against that. And
As
I say
somebody,
start, because even with this museum in full production, this is the beginning.
The thing that's
yeah,
also really neat about this, and that I think is also important to highlight, is where the museum is built is 13 feet above where the wharf actually is, or like the historic wharf. And this is something that a lot of indigenous groups are going through, of this reclamation of lands, of important sites. They're buying back these places that hold significance to them as a way to try and memorialize, as a way to try and preserve, because otherwise the potential future of these sites is up in the air.
Yeah, and if we with that, if we can go through, I believe under the section of this article title, it's about the humanity. You can see they have a number of different. I'm going to say monuments, because each one looks like a war memorial to um, the truly horrific experiences of the African Americans that were brought here to be enslaved. There's a wall with ships and casualty counts. There is a floor panel designed with bodies. There are sculptured of huddled human-esque figures. There's even part of a Maya Angelou poem inscribed on a wall. This is has more hallmarks of a war memorial than a museum in many ways, especially as you kind of scroll through these sort of sets of photos on the outside.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's very clear that that trauma is at the heart of what is happening,
And
that's
they're trying
important.
to evoke those emotions. They're trying to help convey certain feelings or certain ideas. I mean, it's a very sobering thing to try and come to terms with, because it impacted so many people and honestly was foundational in this country. So,
yeah. There's no getting around it. And as somebody with a friend in South Carolina, I will be checking out this museum when I go to visit them.
you
Yeah.
betcha. But yeah, I thought this was kind of a cool article Cullen brought up, because it's showing reclamation of this past, reclamation of the future, but also a way to try and help combat the lack of education, I guess.
Yeah, and usually on this channel, we spend a lot of time criticizing established museums and pushing for better practices, and it's nice to just see a new museum coming into the fray that I'm sure we'll have something to criticize about later, but whose goal and whose sort of preview, as it were, with this article is very necessary and very positive for the world at large.
But yeah, I think that's a great point for us to wrap up. If you guys enjoyed today's video, be sure to drop a like and to subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.